Well, I think it's a big development for sure, but I want to put it in the context of the work we're doing on the Intelligence Committee. I'm not going to be an armchair prosecutor. I'm going to leave a lot of that work to Mr. Mueller. I think he's capable of that, and he's going to be following up on this story for sure. I think the bigger message here is that the Trump campaign knew that Russia was involved in trying to help Donald Trump win the election as early as June of 2016, and the sort of casual way where Donald Trump Jr. got this email said, we've got information from the Russian government that is involved in trying to help your father win the election. He emails back, we'll set a meeting up, and it sounds, I can't remember the exact words, but he said, I love it, maybe for later in the summer. I mean, all of these denials, all of this, this is a lie, it's a witch hunt, there's nothing to it, it just goes out the window with this revelation. Donald Trump Jr. was on television at the time of the Democratic National Convention, went on and on about how it was all a tissue of lies and the Democrats had lost their moral compass and it was all trying to defeat his father, and yet a month before, he knows that the Russians are involved in this project, if you will.
What does this do to your investigation? And I am assuming Donald Trump Jr. has earned himself a seat at the witness table across from you.
There's no question that we want to talk to him as soon as possible. And I think the other piece, though, is we need to understand what more is there. Is this the tip of an information iceberg, or is this an isolated event? One of the other disturbing things about this was the sort of casual nature of these emails back and forth, referring to a Russian guy that they had a connection with by his first name. They mentioned this lawyer as a Russian government lawyer, and for the last 3 or 4 days we've gotten all this these denials saying we don't know who she was or who she represented, we didn't know her name, but in the email she was referred to as a government lawyer. So yes, we definitely want to talk to him. He's expressed a willingness to do so. I hope that can be done as soon as possible. I think it should be done in open session. I don't see anything classified in this discussion because I think the American people, again, need to understand what the Russians did so we can prevent it from happening again. They will be back, and that's really what bothers me.
And finally, on this topic, what does any or all of this tell you about our level of compromise, our president's level of compromise, walking into a meeting like the bilateral in Germany with Putin?
Well, it's troubling because one of the techniques in the tradecraft of this espionage game is to offer somebody something, and then if they take it, you have your hooks into them, and they're subject to being influenced in an improper way. And that's one of the problems. When that email came from saying that we have information, and it said it from the Russian government, the response should have been, number one, no, and number two, get me the FBI. Instead, we'll set up the meeting. Now, what transpired at that meeting is almost irrelevant because of the willingness to enter into this kind of discussion with the Russian government when it said right in it, it's part of their effort to help your father win the election. That's very troubling.
I assume you were up home during the 4th of July break, and I further assume that the constituents you talked to might have been more interested in any future hikes in their health care premiums and where that care was going to come from than they were the Russian matter. Would that be a correct assumption?
That is a correct assumption, Brian. I had an experience I've never had. I've marched in a lot of parades. I've never been in a parade before where people lobbied me on an issue. I marched with Susan Collins, as a matter of fact, in the Eastport, Maine 4th of July parade. There were 10,000 people there. And, you know, you go down the row and shake hands and give five to the kids. A significant number of people came over to me during that time. They took my hand. Sometimes they took both my hands and said, save our health care. I've never had that happen before, and I think Susan Collins had exactly the same experience. This is what's on people's mind. There's no question. And this bill that we've been hearing about for the last couple of weeks that was drafted in secret is terrible and will be terrible for the people of this country. Now, I hear there's another secret bill coming out later this week, and this process could be a lot more open if we had a lot of people involved and having input, think of this, Brian, have hearings, have discussion, have debate, instead of springing a bill on us and then hoping for a vote a couple of days later. It backfired 2 weeks ago. I believe and hope that's what's going to happen again, because maybe if that happens again, we can start having some serious discussions about how to fix the Affordable Care Act. I'm ready.
Senator Angus King from the great state of Maine. Senator, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Brian.